Joining me now is Stephen Meintjies, analyst of Imara SP and we're going to be discussing Arcelormittal's latest announcements that they are going to be increasing steel prices by 600 Rand a tonne. Stephen, thank you very much for your time today. We've heard the Department of Trade and Industry quite vocal about the fact that they're not very happy about this new announcement and the fact that we're going to be paying more for steel in South Africa. It really has to do with the surcharge which they're going to be implementing because of the Kumba iron ore contract, which is now coming to an end. Well, we suspect that it is coming to an end, which used to be at cost plus 3.
Well, absolutely. I think before we go into that, we should just be aware that the front page news on the Financial Times, of course, is the agreement between the global iron ore miners and global steel producers, whereby the benchmark system has been done away with, and they've got they're going on to 3 monthly contracts now, and it looks as though they'll be paying round about, well, there are estimates anything from $100 to 110, even higher per tonne. So it's a huge increase compared to the $60 they were paying last year. And obviously, and that story in the Financial Times mentions that global prices could have to go up by as much as a third. So, however, perhaps a little unfortunately for Arcelormittal, they decided to put the surcharge in and apparently relating it more to the iron ore price hike, which I think they've got themselves into a tight spot because they could have attributed to the changes in the global iron ore contracting as well. That too. However, in the past 6 years or so, they've always said that their pricing is formula based relative to overseas prices. Apparently, it's not quite the same thing as import parity, but that could be a distinction without a difference. And so, theoretically, and in fact, one of the reasons why the deal between Kumba and the old ISCOR was approved 9 years ago was that the government apparently expected that that benefit would be passed on to consumers, and that's really why it's been so hot under the collar for all these years. But have the consumers been benefiting from the cost plus 3 contract? Evidently not, judging by the litigation we've seen against Arcelormittal. And also the fact that, you mentioned the pricing structures that Arcelormittal embarks on, and you know, it's got to do with the basket system, apparently the US, Germany, China and Russia, and really looking at those countries and what they charge there for steel. You mentioned, of course, the import parity pricing system, and you said, you know, that some say that there isn't really much of a difference between the two. Tell us exactly how that works. So even though we produce steel here in South Africa, we're still paying as a consumer for international prices. Well, yes. The idea, well, first of all, there's obviously a benefit to the economy if instead of importing huge quantities of steel, we make it ourselves. But then the question of pricing does arise, and clearly while free imports can keep the industry honest, you know, it's very expensive, and I mean, there's a physical cost of railing steel up from the coast to the biggest consumer up here in Gauteng. So it's always been fraught with problems, and there are various other industries where we've had this problem as well. And generally speaking, the fact of the matter is that a local producer situated on the Highveld will have an inherent advantage over as against imports. But what people are cross with is that it's pricing its product at a price which effectively makes it difficult to import, and at the same time guarantees very fat margins for them. So Arcelormittal, with all the troubles that they're currently facing, what would you do with the stock itself? If you do hold Arcelormittal, should you be selling at these levels, or you know, would you be holding on? Well, I think there's a huge uncertainty still as to what price they're going to have to pay Kumba, and the legal issues are still very, very complex. It looks as though they're going to have to pay a lot more. But clearly they will be able to charge higher prices now if the global prices are going up. So, and then I don't think their iron ore prices, well, I mean, their iron ore prices might go up as well, quite a bit more. Quite frankly, Highveld is a safer bet because it has its own raw material supply. And in terms of the Department of Trade and Industry, and they've said that South Africans should not be penalised for Arcelormittal's inability to renew contracts, and apparently it's also going to be taken to the Competition Commission. How is this going to change the scenario in South Africa, you know, regarding iron ore and steel? Well, I think consumers are going to have to pay a lot more for the steel. I mean, it's a fact that globally steel prices are going up.
And you said by a third. That's the estimation at this stage.
The benchmark iron ore price, yes, a third. That's the Financial Times. Those are the experts they're quoting.
And in terms of, the 40-year-old contracting system, which is now coming to an end, and you touched on it a little earlier in the day, BHP Billiton and Vale making headway with those Chinese and Japanese steel mills. That's also going to change the scenario quite dramatically. So in other words, cars and durable goods and durable appliances for consumers are generally just going to become more expensive, given that we are going to be more exposed to the spot prices, and then on the other end, these companies are actually going to be making higher profits.
Yes, certainly for the next few years we're going to see high steel prices and iron ore prices. Obviously our iron ore producers will benefit from that. But then, after 3 or 4 years or 4 years, we'll probably see prices receding again.
Stephen, let's turn our attention now to the latest merger news that we've heard in South Africa. Metropolitan teaming up with Momentum, of course, FirstRand's Momentum. How is that going to impact FirstRand?
Well, it's a commendable decision by the relatively new CEO, Sizwe Nkosana, to unbundle. And it means that you've got a genuinely new, free entity on the life field. And as I think we've just heard, the synergies are pretty good. One normally has to be very skeptical about mergers, but the synergies seem to be pretty good. And we have a new player in Africa, a name yet to be announced, which will be quite interesting to hear. And it puts RMBH, incidentally, in quite an interesting position, because they already have 26.7% of Discovery, and now they'll end up with 18% of the new company following the unbundling by FirstRand. FirstRand, of course, will have nothing. So RMBH has said that it's envisaging a separation of its life company and bank interests into 2 separate companies, and buying some more, one way or another, getting some more, pushing its interest from 18% up to anything between 25 and 35%.
Could this go to the competition authorities, considering that Discovery?
I think it will probably go as a matter of routine, but bear in mind we've got some very big, hefty players already. I mean, Liberty and Old Mutual, and so and Sanlam, they're quite, big enough to look after them. And you see, there's always room for newcomers. Look where Clientele, it's come from nowhere 8 years ago into quite a strong player, very successful.
Stephen.